Have you ever been cooking in the kitchen and you literally just want to throw a saucepan against the wall? That's what the cooking stress sometimes does to you. Everything's going on, pans are boiling over, the oven's on fire, and you just want to scream. You're not alone. Everyone gets stressed in the kitchen from time to time. So these are the 12 tips that I've learned over time to help stop me stressing about food. There's no point being stressed for 3 hours cooking something that you're probably just going to eat in about 10 minutes. Life is short, just cook to be happy and don't worry. So my first 3 tips are all about preparation and how you can get ahead of the game to reduce your stress levels. So my first tip comes straight from professional kitchens and it's called Mise En Place. And this is French for everything all in its place. And it's a lovely little concept. Basically it means before you start cooking, get everything ready and prepare so that when it comes to the cooking, you're ready to go. From chopping your vegetables to weighing and washing your rice. It also means that you've cleaned everything. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm really messy and chaotic in the kitchen. I just give off this whole disaster vibe, to be honest. So cleaning before I start and also as I go, having a washing up bowl of water ready to drop stuff in is the perfect way for me to feel more relaxed and more calm. Tip number 2, read the recipe. If you're using a recipe to cook your dish, actually make sure you read it ahead of time. This will help you get to know it, avoid any nasty surprises, and make sure you know what you're doing. After all, you don't want to be baking a cake, come to step 6 where it tells you to add the melted chocolate and you're holding a bar of chocolate in your hand. Tip number 3 is learn your ingredients. If, for example, the recipe is asked for unwaxed lemons and you've learned that you've actually bought waxed lemons by mistake, then you need to know in advance and prepare what you're going to do to get around it. If you're using yogurt in a tikka masala, there's a big difference between a full-fat yogurt and a low-fat yogurt. So think about how the ingredients you have are going to work and whether you need to do anything in advance to fix it. My next 5 tips are all about simplifying your food to make it easier for you. Now this is so important if you're starting out cooking because this is going to be a great way to reduce stress. Everyone thinks they have to overcomplicate things, but you don't. Simplify. So tip number 4, cook one dish. All you need to make is one thing. You don't need to get caught up with sides and starters, desserts and dips. Just make one thing really well and you'll have done yourself proud and it'll help reduce stress. This could be, for example, making one main course and then whacking some rice in the microwave that's already a packet. That's fine, I won't judge you. I do it all the time, I'm doing it tonight, no pressure. Or it could involve sticking on a ready meal and making an exciting side dish that's brand new. You still get the satisfaction and achievement of making something new, but without the stress of trying to do it all at once. Tip number 5 is use a recipe that you don't have to change. Often the recipe might be for a different number of people than you're serving, whether you need to increase the amount to serve more people or reduce it to serve 1 or 2. If you can avoid this and get a recipe that serves the exact number of people that you're cooking for, this can really help reduce stress. Likewise, if you don't have most of the ingredients of your recipe, you're going to probably find that quite a stressful experience because you have to chop and change all over the place and it's just going to be hard. If you have to change the ingredients or the cooking method, using the oven rather than a pan, or swap out sweet potatoes for butternut squash, for example, then you know you might have some stress on your hands because you might be struggling. Tip number 6. Use a slow cooker. Slow cookers are fantastic for reducing stress because you're probably fresh in the morning unless you have kids and you've not suffered through a whole day of work, so you can pop some things in the slow cooker, let it work its magic, and you can have a delicious meal to look forward to when you're tired later at the end of the day. Tip number 7. Avoid multitasking. Now I know there's a debate about whether men can multitask, whether women can multitask. I can't multitask. So what I do is I avoid doing some laundry or running errands while I'm trying to cook. It's important to stay in the same room as your food, stay in that kitchen, because things can change very quickly, and so you need to be on hand to react, to smell, to listen to it, to see how it changes. So staying in the same room and avoiding multitasking is great to reduce stress. Now a little bit of music can help. I love listening to podcasts in the kitchen, and that can reduce stress, but that's not multitasking. Tip number 8 is to be aware of the temperatures you're going to need to cook. Often a recipe might ask you to bake something at 210 degrees, but then bake another thing at 180. You need to be prepared for this situation so that you know what you're going to do. Are you going to wrap the cooler item in some tin foil, or are you going to place it at the bottom of the oven? Alternatively, the best way to do it is just to simplify it and find ways to cook things at similar temperatures. Now the final 4 tips are all about pressure and taking the pressure off yourself. Because after all, food is about love, it's about creating something for yourself, it's not about stressing yourself out. Life's too short to stress yourself out, so you might as well make something delicious to enjoy and not worry too much about it. So tip number 9 is don't compare yourself to other people. Now, what you're making at home isn't going to look like a restaurant meal. It's just not. The presentation, the skills, the time involved is just completely different. So don't feel bad or stressed if it's not going the way you want and it's not looking like that restaurant meal. Likewise, if your friends make something and it looks different or it just seems so simple, you don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know how stressed they are in the situation either. So don't compare yourself to other people. Don't set your expectations too high and don't put that pressure on yourself. Now, tip number 10, I actually got straight from my boyfriend. And I asked him what stresses you out in the kitchen, because he's not as big a fan of cooking as me. And he says it's when I interfere. And I think we all know someone who interferes in cooking, and that is a really important thing to be aware of. So it's really tempting when you get stressed in the kitchen to call on some outside help to pitch in, or if you're not sure what you're doing, give you some advice. But don't call in an expert who's going to do things their way and interfere, because this can stress you out, they can try and change things, and it can make it worse rather than better. Tip number 11 is don't cook something new for other people. Try and cook something that you've tried and tested many times before. It'll probably come out better and you'll be less stressed and more able to enjoy their company. If you've never made a beef Wellington before, don't make it for a dinner party. Don't let the first time you cook a roast be Christmas Day. It's gonna go horribly wrong. There's not many takeaways on Christmas Day. There's nothing worse than having to call it quits and order a takeaway because your dinner party dishes have failed. So if you do want to make something for other people that's a little bit special, try and practice it beforehand and see what the pitfalls are. Tip number 12, the final tip, is cook at the weekend. If you're stressed in the kitchen, don't do it after a long day of work when all you want to do is relax. Save it for the weekend when you've probably got a little bit more time. Of course, if you work at the weekend, then you've got to find the right day for you, your off day, your rest day, whatever. But don't try and rush it when you're tired. Give yourself enough time to cook, and the weekend's the perfect way to do that. I hope these tips have been really useful for you. Drop some more in the comments if you can think of ways for me to reduce my stress in the kitchen. Otherwise, it'd mean a lot if you could subscribe to Home Cook Club and get more of these videos in future. Thank you for watching.